It was a chilly Thanksgiving evening. The leaves rustled outside, and the occasional howl of the wind added a haunting melody to the night. Our family was small, just me, my mom, my brother Jake, and our grandparents. We always gathered at my mom's old Victorian house, a creaky, weathered place that seemed to groan with each gust of wind. We had just sat down at the dining table, our plates piled high with turkey, mashed potatoes, and all the classic fixings. My grandfather carved the turkey with the precision of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. It was tradition, and traditions were important to us. As we settled into our meal, a loud knock echoed from the front door. We all paused, forks mid-air, exchanging confused glances. "I'll get it," I said, pushing my chair back and heading to the door. Through the frosted glass, I saw a shadowy figure, tall and unmoving. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to mask the tremble in my voice. "Just someone passing through, needing some help?" A man's voice replied, muffled by the door and the wind outside. I hesitated, but before I could decide, Jake was beside me, his curiosity winning over his caution. We cracked the door open, just enough to see him. He was soaked, his clothes clinging to his thin frame, his eyes dark and sunken. "Please, it's freezing. Just need to make a phone call," he said, his voice almost a whisper. My mom appeared behind us, giving us a look that said everything. "I'll get him a phone," she whispered, disappearing into the kitchen. We waited in silence, the stranger's breath visible in the cold air. Mom returned, handing him an old cell phone. "You can use it here on the porch," she said firmly. The man nodded, his hands trembling as he dialed a number. After a moment, he handed the phone back. "No answer," he muttered. "Mind if I wait here just for a bit?" My grandfather, always the cautious one, shook his head. "Sorry, son. Best move along. There's a shelter in town just a mile down the road." The man's face twitched, his eyes darting between us. "Right, sorry to bother you," he mumbled, before turning and disappearing into the dark. We watched until he vanished into the shadows, and then shut the door, locking it tight. We tried to resume dinner, but the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations were stilted, and every creak of the old house made us jump. Just as we started to relax, another knock, this one softer, almost hesitant. Jake got up, more annoyed than anything, and swung the door open. No one was there. Jake stepped onto the porch, peering into the darkness. "Must have been the wind," he shrugged, closing the door. But then, a noise from the backyard. A rustling, followed by the unmistakable crunch of leaves. Grandpa motioned for us to stay put as he grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. We waited, hearts pounding, straining to hear any sign of what was out there. Minutes felt like hours. Then, the beam of the flashlight swept across the windows, and Grandpa reappeared, his face pale. "There's footprints in the snow," he whispered, leading into the woods. We gathered in the living room, trying to decide what to do. Calling the police felt dramatic, but the unease was growing. Suddenly, a loud thud came from upstairs, directly above us. We froze. Jake and I exchanged a glance, and without thinking, we raced up the stairs. The guest room door was ajar, and the window was wide open, curtains billowing in the wind. Jake leaned out, peering into the night. "There's no way someone climbed up here," he said, shaking his head. But as he pulled back, something caught my eye. A smear of mud on the windowsill. Back downstairs, we told everyone what we'd found. Mom suggested we all stay together in the living room, and Grandpa agreed, positioning himself by the window, flashlight in hand. Hours dragged on, the storm outside growing fiercer. Just as we started to drift off, a loud crash from the kitchen jolted us awake. We rushed in to find the back door swinging open, the lock busted. A cold breeze swept through, sending a chill down my spine. Grandpa hurried to secure the door, while Jake and I scanned the backyard, the beam of our flashlight catching nothing but swirling snow. It was clear now. Whoever that man was, he wasn't alone. We barricaded the doors, closing every curtain and shutting off the lights, huddling together in the darkness. Every sound was amplified, every shadow a potential threat. Then came the tapping, slow and deliberate, on the living room window. Jake crept over, pulling the curtain aside ever so slightly, his face drained of color. "There's 3 of them," he whispered, "just standing there, watching." Panic set in. Mom called the police, her voice shaking as she explained what was happening. Minutes felt like hours as we waited, clutching each other, eyes glued to the windows. When the red and blue lights finally washed over the house, we exhaled a collective sigh of relief. The police searched the area, finding tracks but no sign of the men. They promised to keep an eye out, advising us to stay alert. As they left, I caught a glimpse of something on the porch, a small, carved turkey, its eyes hollowed out. That night, none of us slept. The wind howled outside, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still being watched. Thanksgiving was never the same after that. We always spent it somewhere else, somewhere safer. But every now and then, when the wind is just right, I think I hear that tapping again, reminding me of the strangers in the dark and the Thanksgiving that almost turned into a nightmare.